Want to learn how to write more content every single month than you're currently doing? Well, this is the video for you. Scaling a blog is much like scaling any business, and what it takes to scale beyond what you can do yourself is to not do it all yourself. You've got to build your business beyond what you can do on your own. This is a great step for bloggers to take. Once they reach that point where they are ready to build, they've got processes in place, there's a system for them of how they create content, of they have a hit list in place of articles that they want to write, and they're ready to be able to produce it faster than they're capable of doing themselves. Now, a few key important things to know before outsourcing content. One is, it's hard to run a business when you don't know the nuts and bolts of how that business works. It's important, Jim and I have said this in a handful of videos recently, it's important to write a certain amount of that content yourself before you ever consider outsourcing. So if you're working on your first blog, I don't want you to outsource unless you've written at least 30 blog posts yourself. And really, I'd prefer that you wrote more like 60 before you started this step. When it comes to outsourcing, we've tried a whole bunch of different methods. We have hired our own team of writers. We still do that today. I think the first time we found any sort of writers, we hired off of the Pro Blogger job board or off of Upwork. That process worked fine, but it's a great way to find writers, but not necessarily industry experts or participants in the industry that you're having them write in. So you're gonna get more journalism types, but not necessarily people who know a lot about your niche. In this video, I wanna talk about how to find writers who have expertise in your niche and train them up to be good writers for your blog. We did this a while back on one of our sites a few years ago called camperreport.com. It went very, very well. We actually got some really awesome content from them. So let me walk you through the process of what it looks like to find, to train, and onboard these writers. For finding bloggers with industry knowledge and experience, we find that one of the best places to go, and the freest place to go, is your own website. You may not have a lot of traffic yet, but we find that it doesn't necessarily take a lot of traffic to get some people who are interested and capable of doing the work that you want them to do. And the good part about this is they are people that at least have interest in the topic that you're writing about. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been on your site. A few ways to get these people to come check out your job application and become interested in this is just to make it visible and noticeable on your website. Now, we've done this a few different ways. In the past, we used a plugin. It was like a hello bar plugin. But basically, it's just a simple plugin that does like a GDPR cookie consent thing, and it just kind of popped in at the top and stays with you until you either click on it or click the little X to get rid of it. And it was just a little message that said, hey, we're hiring writers. If you have any interest in writing on this topic, click here, and it's just gonna take you to a page that teaches you more about it. More recently on a blog, we literally just put it in the menu that was across the top of the blog. It just says, get paid to write for this site. Very, very simple. On an example I want to show you here, this is one, it's not actually live, it's not one that, the site's live, the content's there, you can go check it out at workprep.com. I might end up taking a lot of this down because we're not actually hiring writers on this website, but I'll leave the page up so that you can find it. But here, I just put it in the sidebar. Now this isn't going to get a lot of attention, but it is going to appear on every post on the website, so that's pretty nice. If I wanted to get more attention to it, what I might do is take the same text that I wrote here, and I might just go in Canva or Photoshop and make just a nice, pretty background on it and make it look really nice, just to draw people's attention. Now, be careful, if it looks too much like an ad, then people just skip it. So you gotta be a little bit careful with that, but doing something to draw people's attention is a good idea. In here, I'm just gonna have it link to a page. This page needs to contain a few important elements. First, I love to talk a little bit about what the website is, who the company is, what we're all about, and what it is that we're looking for. And you'll see that on this page, we did that in just a few sentences. I like to be really clear and right up front about payment. How much should you pay? Kind of depends on your niche. You need to pay what it takes to get people that are actually willing to write the content for your site and who are competent in that niche. On this website, it's all about just getting an education and having a career. And so the number of people that have experience with getting an education and having a career is very, very big. And so we can pay somewhere in that 2, 3, 4 cents a word range and probably be able to get plenty of writers. In more specialized industries where there are fewer people doing it, there are a lot fewer people doing it to a level of experience or a level of expertise that you want for your site, you might need to pay more like 4, 5, or 6 cents per word. There are other ways that you can pay. You can pay based on time, but then people are just their incentive is to take longer to write a blog post, which is good to a point. If somebody's taking 8 hours to write a 1,000 word blog post, you're probably going to be paying way too much for that piece of content, which is why paying by the word is great, but that incentivizes people to write quickly and maybe not do a great job. So another way to approach this is on your hit list itself, right? This is the article I want you to write. Here's the headline. Here's how many words I want it to be. Here's how much I'm paying for it. And here is the research I want you to do. So it may be that for a 1,000-word article, you're actually paying more like what you would pay for a normal 2,000-word article, but it's got a lot of in-depth research. It just only needs to be about 1,000 words long. That's actually probably one of my favorite ways to do a pay scale, and that's totally fine, but at least give people an idea right up front how much you're gonna pay. Some people kind of hide that, like after you apply, I'll tell you, but then what you'll get is a whole ton of inquiries of people who don't take the time to fill out your application and just say, how much you paying? You don't want that. Just filter them out right away. They're gonna find out at some point, and they're gonna decide right then whether or not they're even interested. Other things, a lot of this is important to know, and we do like to specify it right up front on the page, but it's also going to all be included in an agreement that you and your writer need to sign. You gotta have that in place. That way you make sure that everybody's covered, everybody's agreed and on the same page. Let me go through a couple examples. Credit. Who gets credit for the content? On a lot of your sites, you may be perfectly happy with each of the writers. In fact, it might be better if each of the writers gets to take credit for their own content. Their name gets to appear on the byline and they get to have a nice little image of them. Maybe even let them link out to their own social media profiles. And that's totally fine. It helps build rapport for your site if they become well known in their industry for that topic. Eventually, that also allows them to be able to have a reputation in that industry. Other times, you're gonna say, look, I want you to write the article, but I already did all the research. I already made a YouTube video about it. I just want you to use that video as research, but I want you to write it under my name. Be upfront about it. In here, we said most of the time you're gonna get to write under your own name if you want to, but sometimes we may ask you to ghostwrite. Then it's clear right up front. Schedule. We want at least 3 blog posts a month from each writer. You can write more than that, but if you're not able to commit to at least 3, sorry, this isn't gonna work out for you. Say it up front. Who owns the content? You, as the owner of the blog, need to own the content. You do not want somebody coming back 3 years from now and saying, hey, I uploaded a photo on the blog. It's a photo I took and I own it. So I want you to pay licensing fees for the last 3 years. It's not something you want to deal with. Get it in writing that you own all the content on your website. And then we do specify that we're hiring people on as contractors, not as paid employees. It totally meets the criteria at least in the US, to be able to have them as a contractor. And so we just like to specify as much as possible right up front. Then I just put a button on the bottom that says apply now. And in this case, I'm just taking it to a Google form. Now, it's not the prettiest form ever. And so if you want something a little bit nicer, you could use something like Jotform. Is a great forms tool. It's not a WordPress plugin. You can embed the forms on your WordPress site, or you can have it link out just like a Google form does. There are other places where you can create forms that look a lot prettier, but this is gonna work and it's free. Other than their basic information, like their name, address, and phone number, we also like them to write a little bit about their experience. It's good to ask them at least a couple of in-depth questions to see how much time they're actually willing to put into this application. If they're not willing to actually thoroughly answer the questions that you ask, they're not gonna be a good candidate. You need to know enough from this to be able to weed out the obvious people that aren't going to do well. Because in the next step, we're going to have people actually write a piece of content. So now that we have a list of potential writers for the website, what we don't know is how good are they at writing and how good are they at following directions. So for the next step, what I suggest doing is putting together a short 15 to maybe 25-minute video. And it can be easily filmed on your cell phone, maybe just as a screen recording, whatever you need to do. But walk people through the process of writing a blog post. What does a good blog post look like to you? Teach them your post recipe. What's the formula for what makes a good blog post? What types of original research would you like them to do? And how do you recommend that they go about doing that? And then invite them to write an article. We have had great success by offering to pay for that article, saying, I don't care how good or bad it is, I'm buying one article from you. If it's good, we'll sign an agreement and we'll keep going. you'll get to publish those articles on your website. You paid for them. That's going to narrow down your list of candidates much further to a group of people that you're going to be happy with having them write on your website. Going forward, what this tends to look like is it's nice to have two things. One, a shared document that lists out kind of your hit list of content. And on that hit list, you really should include the headline for the article, exactly as you want it to appear in the blog post. It's good to have these writers actually writing on your website, not in like Word documents or Google Docs or something like that. It's going to save you a lot of time if they write directly in WordPress and format it there. Next to the headline, specify how long approximately this blog post should be. Specify if there's any original research that you want to do. And then if you are doing a pay structure where you're paying based on like what the article is, not just word count, specify how much you're paying for that article. And then have another column where people can enter their name when they've claimed that article for themselves. You will need to create a WordPress username for each of the writers on your website. If you give them author access, that will allow them to go write articles directly on your website, but not make changes to anything else or anybody else's posts other than their own. The second tool that you're really going to want to have in place is some sort of shared communication tool. We find it's really beneficial to be able to just message everybody, to be able to message people one-on-one directly there rather than handling everything through email, and for them to be able to message each other to some extent. A tool like Slack is going to allow you to do that for free for the most part, unless you just have a lot of writers. Something to keep in mind, there's a pretty good chance that over the first few months, you're going to lose some of these writers. So this whole process that we've outlined for you is actually something that we have kept up evergreen on some of our sites in the past, where as we lose a writer, we now have a list of applications that we can go through and pick somebody to test out and replace them with. And the beautiful thing about that is as your site gets bigger and as you get more and more traffic on your site, you're always going to have people that you can pick from that are going to be able to do a great job of writing for your site, potentially bringing on more and more writers over time, allowing you to maybe quadruple the amount of content you write in a month, or maybe even 10x it. If you're at the point that you want to do this and you want help creating great training for your writers, we actually have a fantastic course all about this entire process, going into much more detail within Project 24. So members of Project 24, if this is a step that you want to take, finding writers that are experienced in your niche, make sure you go check out that course. We even have a training video in there that you get to share with your writers that's going to give them all the information they need on how to write a good blog post. So you don't have to create that yourself. Go check it out inside.